The emergency sirens on the Stellar Sentinel, Commander Lyravar's flagship, weren't merely loud. They resonated with a deep, primal wail that seemed to bypass the auditory canals and go straight for the soul. They were designed by the Celestari Concord to induce urgency, not panic. But on this day, the distinction was moot. Panic was a contagion, and it was sweeping through the bridge crew like a solar flare. Lyra, her 6 luminescent eyes focused with an unwavering intensity, ignored the frantic chirps and clicks of her bridge officers. Her species, the Celestari, were renowned throughout the Lumina Collective for their emotional fortitude, their psionic calm. But even their innate mental disciplines were straining under the weight of what the long-range sensors were now confirming. "Commander, readings confirmed," chirped Subcommander Vel, his usually iridescent skin a mottled gray with fear. "They are consuming the Cronus Nebula? The star matter compression rate, it's unprecedented. Energy signatures are off the scale." Lyra felt a cold dread, not unfamiliar, but never before this absolute. The Cronus Nebula, a swirling, iridescent expanse of cosmic dust and nascent stars, had been considered a celestial nursery, a place of profound beauty and potential. Now, it was a feeding ground. The Vorlix. The name itself was a whispered terror across 24 known star systems. They were not an empire, not a conquering fleet. They were a phenomenon. They came from the deep voids between galaxies, beings of unimaginable power and unknowable purpose. Their ships were not vessels built of metal and energy, but impossibly vast organic constructs, like gargantuan crystalline leviathans that moved with a horrifying slowness, yet consumed everything in their path with terrifying efficiency. They didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They simply took. And when they took stars, they didn't just extinguish them. They processed them. They refined their raw energy into something else, something that distorted space-time around them, creating a wake of cosmic entropy that even the most advanced observational equipment struggled to comprehend. Entire stellar clusters had simply vanished. Planets, with or without life, had been reduced to dust. "Visual confirmation, Subcommander," Lyra commanded, her voice cutting through the rising panic. Her 4 upper eyes, usually a serene blue, now pulsed with a nervous violet. "I want to see the horror." The main view screen shimmered, then resolved a nightmarish vista. Where the vibrant heart of the Cronus Nebula should have been, there was a gaping, black maw. And within that maw, impossibly vast, were the Vorlix. Not ships, not individual beings, but colossal, living structures, like fragmented continents of obsidian crystal, laced with veins of sickly green light. They were slowly, methodically, ingesting the very essence of a star, drawing its fiery heart into their pulsating forms. One of Lyra's junior officers let out a strangled sob. Another began to click uncontrollably, a Celestari sign of extreme distress. Even the stoic Ensign Jinx, who had seen his homeworld's moons shattered by a rogue asteroid, swayed on his feet. This was the terror. This was the Vorlix. And they were heading, slowly but inexorably, towards the Lumina Collective's most populous systems, towards Aethelgard, the Celestari homeworld. "Orders, Commander?" Vel asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The Collective High Command has issued the Ultimate Evacuation Protocol. All remaining combat vessels are to form a defensive line at the Argus Gate system. Civilian transports are diverting to the Cygnus Vale." The Argus Gate, a bottleneck system strategically important, but little more than a delaying tactic. Lyra knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the core, that nothing the Collective had could truly stop the Vorlix. They were facing annihilation. "Transmit message to all remaining units," Lyra ordered, her voice gaining a steely edge. "Maintain formation. Prepare for last stand. For the Lumina Collective, for Aethelgard." A collective chirp of agreement, tinged with despair, rippled through the bridge. They would fight. They would die. But they would do so with honor. Suddenly, an anomalous energy signature flared on the far edge of their long-range scanners. It was faint, barely a whisper against the Vorlix's overwhelming presence, but it was there. and it was moving with impossible speed, not towards the Argus Gate, but into the Kronos Nebula, directly towards the Vorlix. "Sub-Commander, what is that?" Lyra demanded, her four upper eyes narrowing. Vel's luminescent skin rippled with confusion. It's a small vessel, Commander, unregistered. Its signature doesn't match any known collective or allied design. No discernible weapon readings. It's almost invisible on the standard frequency, and it's moving at velocities that defy our current understanding of warp travel. "Intercept it," Lyra ordered, a new desperate hope mixing with her dread. It could be a scout from an unknown civilization, or a misguided fool. Either way, it needs to be warned. "Warning, Commander," Vel squawked. "It's heading straight for the Vorlix. It will be obliterated before we can even hail it." "Then hail it," Lyra snapped. "Full power to comms. Try every known frequency. If it's suicide, I want to know why." Aboard the Stardust Wanderer, Elias Echo Thorn hummed a tuneless melody, his fingers dancing over the holographic controls. The ship, a sleek, utterly unique deep space exploration vessel, was his home, his canvas, and his sanctuary. It was also, at this very moment, performing a highly illegal, borderline suicidal maneuver. A blind, uncontrolled slingshot through the Kronos Nebula, using the Vorlix's own gravitational distortions to accelerate past any conventional warp limits. His internal sensors screamed warnings, hull integrity dropping, shield flickering, gravitational shear reaching critical levels, and the energy signatures of the Vorlix, a swirling vortex of cosmic dread, were growing exponentially on his main view screen. "All right, big guys," Elias murmured, his voice calm, almost conversational. His eyes, a striking hazel, held a peculiar blend of focus and distant amusement. "Let's see what you're made of." Elias Thorn wasn't just a deep space scout for the United Terran Alliance, UTE. He was an anomaly. His call sign, Echo, wasn't just for his knack for disappearing without a trace. It was for his unnerving emotional echo. A complete, almost Zen-like absence of fear in situations that would send most organics into catatonic shock. Where others screamed, he observed. Where others panicked, he calculated. He was a human, born for the void, and perhaps for the end of everything. His mission had been simple: explore. The UTE, a fledgling, ambitious, interstellar power, was rapidly expanding, pushing the boundaries of known space, and Elias was their cutting edge, sent to chart new hyperlanes, discover new worlds, and occasionally make friends, or at least avoid getting eaten. Then the emergency transmission had come, a frantic, garbled message from the Lumina Collective, detailing the Vorlix threat. Elias had been closer than any other UTE vessel, and instead of retreating, he had done what any sane human would do. He had gone to investigate. Alone. A new comms frequency suddenly pierced his active sensors. It was a Celestari signal, distorted but persistent. "Unidentified vessel, this is the stellar sentinel of the Celestari Concord. You are on an intercept course with Vorlix entities. Retreat immediately. Repeat, retreat immediately. Your vessel will be destroyed." Elias merely hummed. "Destroyed? Bit dramatic, aren't we?" He activated his external comms, adjusting his voice to a calm, almost unnervingly steady tone. "This is Elias Thorn, call sign Echo, vessel Stardust Wanderer, United Terran Alliance." "Affirmative. I'm aware of the large, hungry space clouds ahead. Just performing a quick survey. Anything interesting you guys have spotted?" There was a stunned silence from the Celestari end, then a furious, high-pitched chirp. "Survey? Human. You are directly approaching beings that are consuming stars. We are facing extinction. Your comm is illogical. Retreat now, or you will perish." Elias chuckled softly. "Extinction, huh? Bit of a Tuesday, then. Look, I appreciate the concern, but I've seen worse. Anyway, I'm picking up some interesting temporal distortions around their primary mass. You guys notice that? Could be a weakness." On the bridge of the Stellar Sentinel, Lyra Var stared at the comms panel, utterly speechless. She had expected a desperate cry for help, perhaps a defiant last stand, not this dispassionate, almost casual assessment of cosmic horror. "Commander, his emotional readings are flatlining," Vel chirped, bewildered. "He shows no fear, no distress, only Curiosity. Curiosity, Lyra echoed, her multiple eyes blinking in disbelief. She snatched the comms mic. Human Elias Thorne, my name is Commander Lyra Var. You are facing the Vorlix, an entity that has rendered entire star systems barren. Your calm is unnerving. Why are you not terrified? Elias's voice came back, still utterly calm, tinged with a faint, almost imperceptible amusement. Terrified, Commander. Why would I be? They're just really big, really hungry. We've got bigger fish to fry. He paused, then added, metaphorically, of course, no actual fish in space, unless you count that incident with the mutated plankton on Rigel 9. That was a messy one. Lyra felt a shiver run down her complex nervous system. This human was either utterly insane or something far, far worse. Lyra's six eyes narrowed, processing the human's bizarre nonchalance. Commander Lyra Var to Elias Thorne, your continued presence is disrupting our defensive preparations. The Vorlix are advancing. Your temporal distortion theory is irrelevant. We are talking about the survival of multiple sentient species. Elias's calm voice cut through the Celestari's urgent tones. Irrelevant? Commander, nothing is irrelevant when you're staring down something that eats stars, especially if that something has a hidden weakness. My scans aren't just picking up general distortions. I'm seeing patterns, rhythmic fluctuations in their mass energy conversion. It's almost like a digestive cycle. On the Stellar Sentinel's bridge, Vel's luminescent skin paled further. A digestive cycle? He thinks they have a stomach? It implies a vulnerability, however infinitesimal, Lyra murmured, a flicker of professional curiosity momentarily overcoming her dread. She then shook her head. Even if there is a digestive cycle, human, what could a single, small vessel possibly do against a stellar-devouring entity? Your ship has no discernible weapons. Oh, the Stardust Wanderer has plenty of discernible features, Elias replied, a hint of genuine warmth entering his voice. Just not the kind that register on your standard military scans. Think of it as a very sophisticated, scientific instrument, with a few highly specialized modifications for, scientific purposes. Lyra felt a prickle of unease. Humans were a newly contacted species within the Lumina Collective's diplomatic sphere, known for their rapid technological advancement, their aggressive expansion, and a perplexing tendency towards both profound empathy and utterly baffling recklessness. This Elias Thorne seemed to embody the latter. Human, by the authority of the Celestary Concord, Lyra declared, trying to reassert control. I order you to withdraw. We cannot risk a distraction that could cost us crucial moments in the Argus Gate defense. With all due respect, Commander, Elias said, his calm unwavering. The Argus Gate defense is, statistically speaking, a noble gesture, but it's also a glorified suicide pact. The Vorlix don't stop. They don't yield. They simply consume. If there's even a 1 in a million chance to find a way to make them choke, I'm taking it. Choke? Vel shrieked, momentarily forgetting his deference. Metaphorically again, Sub-Commander, Elias clarified. Unless they've got a really big windpipe, which given their size is a distinct possibility. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm heading in. I'll transmit my findings, assuming I don't become part of their bioluminescent exhaust fumes. And with that, Elias Thorne cut the comms. On the Stellar Sentinel's view screen, the tiny, unregistered vessel, the Stardust Wanderer, accelerated. It was no longer merely approaching the Vorlix. It was darting between the monstrous crystalline structures, a gnat dancing around slumbering giants. He's doing it, Ensign Jinx whispered, his 4 eyes wide with a mix of terror and fascination. Lyra watched, her heart a cold knot in her chest. She had seen countless acts of courage, of defiance in her long career. But this was beyond courage. It was an almost alien act of audacity. And yet something about his utterly unflappable calm, his casual dismissal of death, resonated with a deep, unsettling truth. Aboard the Stardust Wanderer, Elias had barely a moment to spare. The Vorlix were close now, impossibly vast, their organic hulls pulsating with the stolen light of the Kronos Nebula. Their sheer energy output was threatening to fry his unshielded systems. All right, Echo, he murmured to himself, his fingers flying across the controls. Time to go fishing. His ship was designed for stealth and deep penetration, not combat. Its primary weapon was a suite of hyper-advanced scientific instruments disguised and repurposed for unconventional tasks. He initiated a full-spectrum deep scan, targeting the rhythmic temporal fluctuations he'd observed. He had a theory. If the Vorlix truly consume stellar matter, they must have some form of internal processing. And processing, no matter how advanced, required a coherent energy flow. A disruption in that flow, however minor, could create a ripple effect. His scanner pinged, a high-frequency energy conduit, deep within one of the Vorlix's colossal crystalline segments, pulsating with immense raw power. "Gotcha," Elias whispered, a faint smile touching his lips. "Looks like you do have a weakness, big guy." He adjusted his trajectory, aiming the Stardust Wanderer towards a narrow, almost imperceptible fissure in the Vorlix's outer hull. It wasn't a docking port, it was a scar, a wound from some ancient cosmic trauma, and it was their entry point. His ship's specialized plating, designed to absorb and deflect exotic energies, glowed with strain as he pushed through the Vorlix's gravitational distortions. Alarms shrieked, consoles sparked, but Elias held steady, his hazel eyes fixed on the fissure. He slipped inside. The interior of the Vorlix was a nightmare of organic growth and pulsating energy. Walls of obsidian crystal pulsed with an inner green light, veins of pure energy snaking through them like colossal arteries. The air, if it could be called that, was thick with the scent of ozone and something akin to burnt metal. "Well, this isn't exactly cozy, is it?" Elias muttered, navigating through the organic labyrinth. His comms were dead now, completely jammed by the Vorlix's internal energies. He was truly alone. He followed the energy conduit, a pulsating river of raw star matter, deeper into the Vorlix's interior. The temperature rose. The very fabric of space-time seemed to warp around him. He felt a strange pressure, a crushing weight that seemed to be trying to unravel his molecular structure. But his suit held, and his calm remained. He reached a vast, cavernous chamber. At its heart, the conduit widened into a colossal, swirling vortex of pure, raw, stellar energy. This was the processing core, the Vorlix's stomach, as he had so casually put it, and it was churning. Around the core, impossibly vast, moved smaller Vorlix entities. They were still immense, like celestial whales, but clearly subordinate to the larger continental structures. They were engaged in some form of maintenance, their crystalline forms glowing as they absorbed energy directly from the core. Elias's ship, the Stardust Wanderer, was a speck. Any one of these smaller Vorlix could crush him without noticing. He was vulnerable, but he had come too far to turn back. His objective was clear: disrupt the energy flow. His ship, despite its lack of conventional weapons, had one specialized piece of equipment designed for deep space resource extraction, a high-frequency molecular disruptor. It was meant to break apart asteroids for mining, but if calibrated just right and pointed at an energy conduit— "Let's see if you like spicy food, big guy," Elias whispered, powering up the disruptor. The ship hummed with a low building energy. The disruptor's emitter extended, a focusing lens shimmering with a faint blue light. He aimed it at a critical point in the energy flow, a nexus where multiple conduits converged. It was a risky shot. If he missed, or if the disruptor wasn't powerful enough, he'd alert the entire Vorlix and be vaporized instantly. He held his breath, his hands were steady, his mind clearer than ever. He wasn't afraid. He was simply doing his job. He fired. A focused beam of shimmering blue energy lanced out from the Stardust Wanderer, striking the energy nexus. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a ripple. The raw stellar energy in the conduit flickered. The smaller Vorlix entities around the core paused their work, their crystalline forms dimming slightly. Then, a wave of feedback slammed into the Stardust Wanderer. Alarms shrieked louder. The ship bucked violently. Elias grunted, fighting the controls, but he held the beam steady. The conduit began to crackle. A deafening roar erupted from the Vorlix itself. Not a roar of aggression, but of pain, of internal distress. The vast crystalline walls of the chamber began to shudder. The pulsating green veins of energy flickered wildly, some even rupturing, spraying streams of raw, superheated stellar matter into the chamber. The smaller Vorlix entities, clearly agitated, began to thrash, their massive forms colliding with each other, creating cascading explosions of crystal and energy. The processing core was destabilizing. Elias grinned. That's what I like to see, a good old-fashioned indigestion. He held the beam for as long as he dared until his disruptor overloaded with a shower of sparks and a smell of burnt electronics. The Stardust Wanderer's internal systems screamed in protest. He had done what he could. Now he had to get out. Elias wrestled with the Stardust Wanderer's controls, the ship bucking like a wild stellar beast. The molecular disruptor, now a smoking ruin, had done its job, but the feedback from the Vorlix's internal core was immense. Raw, chaotic energy surged through his hull, threatening to tear the Wanderer apart. His view screen was a kaleidoscope of warning lights. "Come on, old girl," Elias grunted, his calm exterior cracking slightly under the physical strain. "Just a little more. You want to see the end of this cosmic indigestion, don't you?" The smaller Vorlix entities in the chamber, still thrashing from the unexpected internal chaos, inadvertently provided his escape. Their panicked collisions ripped open new fissures in the main entity's vast structure, creating temporary, unstable pathways to the outside. Elias seized the opportunity, pushing the Stardust Wanderer through a newly formed gap, narrowly avoiding a cascade of collapsing crystalline formations. He burst out of the Vorlix's interior into the swirling, unstable darkness of the Cronus Nebula. The external sensors immediately registered the change. The vast, star-eating entity was no longer drawing energy smoothly. Its core was fluctuating wildly, its monstrous form pulsing with a violent, erratic green light that occasionally flared into blinding white. "Success," Elias muttered, a faint, tired smile on his face. "Looks like someone's got the cosmic tummy ache." But he wasn't out of danger yet. The Vorlix's distress had triggered an immediate, powerful counterreaction. Vast, shimmering tendrils of energy, like colossal whips, lashed out from its surface, tearing through the nebula. These were not targeted attacks, but uncontrolled, desperate reactions from a creature in pain. "Ah, the angry belch," Elias observed, expertly piloting the Wanderer through the chaotic energy storm. His ship, designed for nimble deep space navigation, danced through the chaos, narrowly avoiding being vaporized by the sheer unbridled energy. On the bridge of the Stellar Sentinel, Lyra Var and her crew watched in stunned silence as the monstrous Vorlix entity began to convulse. The majestic, terrifying absorption of the Cronus Nebula had ceased. Instead, the view screen showed a scene of cosmic agony. "Commander, the Vorlix energy signature is destabilizing," Vel chirped, his luminescent skin now glowing with a mixture of fear and awe. "Its core readings are erratic. It's recoiling." "Recoil?" Lyra breathed, her 6 eyes wide with disbelief. This was unprecedented. Nothing had ever made the Vorlix recoil. "And that small human vessel, it's still alive," Ensign Jinx exclaimed, pointing a trembling digit at the view screen. The Stardust Wanderer, battered but intact, was indeed weaving through the lashing energy tendrils, a tiny, defiant speck against the cosmic Leviathan. "Human Elias Thorne," Lyra whispered to herself. "What did you do?" She grabbed the comms mic, her hands surprisingly steady. "Elias Thorne, this is Commander Lyra Var. Report, what is happening?" A burst of static, then Elias's calm voice, slightly distorted but still unmistakable, filtered through. "Just caused a bit of indigestion, Commander. Looks like they're not too fond of high-frequency molecular disruption. Think of it as a cosmic antacid." "Antacid?" Vel almost shrieked. "You caused a stellar-consuming entity to recoil with an antacid?" "Well, it was a very powerful antacid," Elias replied, a faint chuckle in his voice. "And it seems to have upset their stellar digestive tract. They're going to be out of commission for a while. Long enough for you guys to get a lock on their core vulnerability." Lyra's mind raced. The sheer audacity, the impossible gambit, and it had worked. The Vorlix, for the first time in recorded history, was vulnerable. Their primary stellar consumption was halted. Their advance, for now, had ceased. "Commander, his ship's shield integrity is at 1%, Vel cried. "Hull integrity critically compromised. He's barely holding together." "Understood," Lyra said, her voice firm. "Sub-Commander Vel, plot an intercept course for the Stardust Wanderer. Ensign Jinx, prepare for immediate long-range targeting of the Vorlix's core. Transmit all data to collective high command. Tell them we have a window. Her bridge crew, momentarily galvanized by the incredible turn of events, snapped into action. The wail of the sirens seemed less panicked now, more urgent, more purposeful. Lyra looked back at the view screen, at the tiny, battered human ship escaping the cosmic horror it had just crippled. Elias Thorne, she murmured, a strange mix of emotions swirling within her. Respect, awe, and that nagging, unsettling sense of something truly profound about this human. Elias had very little memory of the Stardust Wanderer's final moments. The cockpit was a mess of sparking wires and dying consoles. He was running on pure adrenaline and stubbornness. He remembered Lyra's hails, the urgency in her voice, the faint sense of hope. He remembered answering, his voice raspy, before the Wanderer's life support finally flickered and died. The next thing he knew, he was in a bright, sterile medical bay. A Celestari medical team, their luminescent skin glowing with concern, chirped anxiously around him. His suit had been peeled away, and 1,000 tiny probes were scanning his body. "He is stable, Commander," a Celestari medic reported to Lyra, who stood by his bedside, her 6 eyes unusually wide. "Remarkable. His cellular regeneration is rapid, and his core emotional readings are still flat." Elias blinked, his hazel eyes focusing. He saw Lyra, her elegant form radiating a palpable energy. "Commander Var," he croaked, his throat dry. "Did it work? Did the Vorlix get its comeuppance?" Lyra gave him a small, almost reverent nod. "It worked, Elias Thorne. Your actions. They bought us time. Enough time for the Collective's combat fleet to get a targeting lock on the Vorlix's destabilized core. They are engaging now. We believe it is retreating from this sector. For the first time in millennia." Elias managed a weak smile. "Good to hear. Wouldn't want anyone else to suffer from cosmic heartburn." "Cosmic heartburn," Lyra repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. "You faced absolute annihilation. You approached a being of unimaginable power and inflicted upon it indigestion. Everyone else on my bridge was terrified, human. Why were you calm?" Elias looked at her, then past her, at the Celestari medical team, their faces still etched with residual fear, despite the good news. He looked at the sterile walls, the advanced medical equipment, the symbol of a civilization that valued order, logic, and emotional control. He took a slow, deliberate breath. His voice, though still a little weak, gained strength, a strange depth that resonated with a quiet, ancient wisdom. "Because, Commander," Elias began, his eyes holding hers, "I've seen what true terror is, and it's not a star-eating entity." Lyra leaned closer, her multiple eyes fixed on him, a shiver running down her spine. "Then what is it, human?" Elias's gaze drifted, not to the sterile room, but seemingly through the hull of the Stellar Sentinel, out into the vast, indifferent void of space. His voice dropped to a near whisper, yet it filled the room, chilling even the most stoic Celestari. "It's what happens when we stop being terrified, when we forget the struggle, when we forget the fight, when we stop being hungry." He paused, and a profound, almost melancholic understanding settled over his features. "That's when you meet the real monsters. And Commander, trust me," he said, finally looking back at Lyra, a faint, almost pitying smile on his lips. "They're far worse than anything out here in the black." Lyra stared at him, her own psionic calm wavering for the first time in memory. She looked at this human, so outwardly calm in the face of cosmic dread, and suddenly the true meaning of his words, the unsettling depth of his perspective, washed over her. He wasn't calm because he didn't fear the Vorlix. He was calm because his species had faced something more terrifying, something internal, something that had forged them into beings capable of this chilling, audacious indifference to external horror. The Celestari medics exchanged uneasy glances. Vel, recovering from his initial awe, clicked nervously. What did he mean, Commander?" Lyra, however, couldn't articulate it. Not yet. Her 4 upper eyes closed slowly, absorbing the profound, unsettling truth. She had sought an answer to his calm, and his words had sent shivers down her spine, chilling her far more effectively than any alien threat. The Vorlix were a monster of the void, but humanity, it seemed, carried its own, far more ancient and terrifying monsters within its collective memory. Monsters that had made them immune to fear by showing them something worse. Lyra Var left Elias Thorne's quarters with a mind churning with new, disquieting insights. The structured, harmonious existence of the Celestari, and indeed much of the Lumina Collective, was built upon avoiding chaos, maintaining order, and achieving emotional equilibrium. They sought to suppress fear, to logically dismantle it. But humanity, it seemed, had embraced it, wrestled with it, and emerged, not fearless, but forged by a different, more profound understanding of terror. She returned to the bridge of the Stellar Sentinel. The immediate crisis of the Vorlix was contained. The collective fleet had pushed the cosmic entity back, its core still destabilized. A fragile peace, won by a single human, now reigned. But a new kind of unrest stirred within Lyra. "Commander," Vel chirped, sensing her presence. "Reports from Collective High Command. They are impressed by the disruption you orchestrated. They are hailing your bravery." "It was Lieutenant Thorne's bravery," Lyra corrected, her gaze distant. She looked at her bridge crew, their iridescent skins shimmering with a newfound relief. They were still Celestari, calm and collected, but she saw the lingering tremor in Vel's hands, the slight flicker in Jinx's eyes. They had been terrified, and rightly so. But Elias Thorne had not. She activated the ship's internal comms, broadcasting to her senior officers. "Attention, all command staff. Gather in the main briefing chamber. Immediate and urgent. I have new directives." Within minutes, the chamber was filled with Celestari and other collective species representatives. A multi-limbed Xylosian strategist, a shimmering gaseous Aurelian engineer, a stoic, rock-skinned Gorak tactician. All eyes turned to Lyra, expecting a triumphant debriefing. Lyra began by recounting Elias Thorne's actions, his impossible daring, and the incredible success of his cosmic antacid. She showed them the holographic readouts of the Vorlix's destabilized core, the trajectory of the Stardust Wanderer into its maw. The room hummed with awe and disbelief. "A monumental feat, Commander," chirped the Xylosian, its many eyes blinking rapidly. "This human has saved countless lives. He has bought us invaluable time." "Indeed," Lyra acknowledged, "but that is not why I called this briefing." She then relayed Elias's words, his explanation for his calm. "Because I've seen what true terror is, and it's not a star-eating entity. It's what happens when we stop being terrified. When we forget the struggle, when we forget the fight, when we stop being hungry, that's when you meet the real monsters. And Commander, trust me, they're far worse than anything out here in the black." A ripple of confusion, then unease, spread through the chamber. The Xylosian's limbs stiffened. The Aurelian's shimmer dimmed. The Gorak's stony face remained impassive, but its internal sensors would be registering the profound emotional shift in the room. "What does this human mean, Commander?" the Aurelian hissed, its gaseous form contracting slightly. "What monsters are worse than the Vorlix? Is this some form of psychological warfare?" Lyra looked at each of them, her 6 eyes conveying the weight of her realization. "He speaks of internal monsters, of the inherent darkness that can arise within a species, within individuals, when complacency sets in. He speaks of the terrors humanity has inflicted upon itself throughout its history." She then presented Jinx's compiled data, showing them images of ravaged Earth cities, holographic projections of ancient, devastating human wars, and timelines of their self-inflicted famines and environmental disasters. The data, dry and factual, painted a chilling picture of a species that had repeatedly pushed itself to the brink of self-annihilation, not by external forces, but by its own decisions, its own fears, its own capacity for hatred and indifference. "They have faced plagues of unimaginable scale," Lyra stated, her voice steady. "Wars that consumed continents, ideological conflicts that dwarfed any interspecies dispute. They have looked into the abyss of their own self-destruction and pulled back, scarred but unbroken. This is why a star-eating entity does not terrify Elias Thorne, because he, and by extension his species, has already grappled with a more profound, more insidious terror, the monstrous potential within themselves. The Gorak tactician finally spoke, its voice a gravelly rumble. A species that understands its own capacity for darkness, a species that fears complacency more than cosmic horror. That is a dangerous yet uniquely resilient ally. Indeed, Lyra agreed. They do not fear the void, for they have navigated the deeper, more treacherous voids of their own souls. They laugh at cosmic terror, not out of ignorance, but from a profound, almost weary understanding of what true terror looks like. It is the terror of losing their edge, of stopping the fight, of becoming sated. And the phrase, stopping being hungry? The Xylosian queried, its luminescent eyes fixed on Lyra. Their constant drive, their relentless innovation, their insatiable curiosity, Lyra explained. It is not just for survival, but a deep-seated fear of stagnation. A fear that if they cease to strive, to overcome, to hunger for more, they will fall prey to the monsters of their past, to the shadows that still lurk within their collective memory. The implications settled heavily in the chamber. The Celestari and the other collective species, in their pursuit of harmony and control, had perhaps become too comfortable, too sated. They had never faced a Vorlix of their own making, and perhaps that was their true vulnerability. Lyra concluded, her voice gaining a new authority. We celebrate the tactical victory against the Vorlix, but we must also learn from this encounter. We must understand what makes humanity calm in the face of cosmic terror. We must understand the price they have paid for that calm. And we must ask ourselves, are we truly prepared for the real monsters if we have never truly acknowledged our own? A new shiver went down Vel's spine, not from fear of the Vorlix, but from the profound, unsettling questions Lyra Var had just raised. He looked at the historical data of humanity, at the images of their self-inflicted scars, and for the first time, he understood the chilling depths of Elias Thorne's calm. The Lumina Collective, a bastion of peace and order, had just encountered a species that was a product of chaos and a constant internal struggle. They had saved the collective from an external threat, but they had also delivered a far more unsettling truth, that the universe held terrors, but the most profound ones were often forged closer to home. And humanity, it seemed, had mastered the art of surviving them, not by suppressing fear, but by confronting it, understanding it, and using it as a crucible for their terrifying, unyielding strength. The words of Elias Thorne, the human who was calm when everyone else was terrified, would forever echo through the Lumina Collective's history, sending shivers down their spines and forcing them to confront the true meaning of strength, survival, and the monsters that truly matter.